Hello! In this video, I am going to be explaining why I'm such a stickler for cropping portraits the way that I do. So mindfulness around cropping, the way that you have things around the edges of your photos on purpose or getting rid of them. Also, cropping involves like the rule of thirds and how you're composing the photo and the balance between getting that in the camera versus getting that on the computer in Lightroom or Photoshop in the post processing. Okay, so my name is Shamini. I am the owner of the Happy Film Company, and I specialize in children and family portraits in Seattle. So, photographing families, lifestyle portraits of children can be extremely chaotic because they're running everywhere and there's tons of movement. It might be throwing kids in the air, it might be kids crawling on the ground, and you've got a lot of people and they're moving. So, to the best of your ability, use your camera to take a photo that is properly exposed, also beautifully composed, and is capturing emotion and is not blurry, right? You've got a lot going on already. Part of the composition, in other words, the way that you're holding the camera, the way that it's angled or turned, will determine what's included in the photograph. So that's essentially cropping in camera. Like if I have the kids in front of me and there's a big garbage can over to the side, I don't want the picture of the garbage can. If I'm holding the camera like this and I can see the garbage can in my photograph, it might be a simple solution of just turning the camera a little bit this way. And then that's called in-camera cropping. I have said, I don't want you, I am cutting you off by moving the lens this way, which will then, of course, if the child has been in the center of the frame, it will move them to the side of the frame because the child didn't move, the camera moved. Okay, so that is like clockwork happening really fast in the mind as you're at a photo shoot. You're constantly like, what am I trying to focus on and what is happening in the periphery that I want to crop out? Where is there a distracting, ugly garbage can? Where is there a random tree that doesn't actually match the rest of the trees? Like if all the trees are green and then there's one that's like brown, sure, you could get really like artsy and be like, it's just the way it naturally is and I'm capturing the art of the scenery and the way that naturally there's a dead tree. And like, yeah, you can do that. That's not my style. I am a proponent of cleanliness in the photo because if you're doing a wildlife forest photo shoot and you're trying to show off like the dynamic trees, then that's fine. But if you're being paid to photograph a child and make the photo all about that child, then the random tree in the back is not artistic, it becomes distracting. Because the human eye picks up on details. It picks up on things that are perfectly straight lines. It picks up on things that are brighter. It picks up on movement and it picks up on human faces. So if you have a person in your photo that's the main person, like the baby or the family, the photo you're taking is there to direct the eye, direct the attention to that person. Everything else, if it's included in the crop, is there because it's either creating a very smooth, calming background from which the subject pops off, or you're using lines and shapes in the surrounding environment to frame them or point the eye towards them. And those are all composition techniques. When it comes to editing, I adjust the crop on almost every single photo. So usually that means I'm correcting horizon. So there's the photo and then you can see that like there's the horizon if you're at the beach, or there's the horizon if you're in a field, or if you're in a home, you'll see where the straight lines of the roof or the countertops are. So wherever there's a straight line going across the photo, that's the horizon, and we're just gonna gently like adjust the crop of the photo. It might only just be like the tiniest little bit to make sure that it's perfectly horizontal, and that creates a very solid, soothing feeling for the viewer. Even if it's just off a little bit, you're kind of like, what's weird about this photo? And you don't want someone to look at your photos and think, what's weird about this photo? You want them to look at the photo and just be like, wow, that kid is cute. So we fix that so it's not distracting. Another thing is smooth edges. So I like to have, when you're looking around the edge of the photo, it's all the same color, all the same texture. It just looks like a perfect bleed off the edges. So if there's, like, I photographed a kid playing in the grass and then there was one little leaf, one random brown leaf in the bottom corner, and the edge of the photo went through that leaf. So I take the crop and I just move it in a little bit so that we cut out that leaf, because the leaf, again, wasn't adding. What it does is you're looking at this picture of this kid in the grass and then your eye kind of sees this brown little dot down here and it's like, what's that? And now the distraction, now it's taken the attention away from the subject. So I just quickly scan around the edges of the photo and I'm like, are there any distracting things? Has there been any like line that's kind of cut in half, or just like a little sliver of light peeking through? Anything that we can just trim off. You know what it's like? You know when you have a piece of paper and there's like a cutting line, like you're in school and you're supposed to cut along the line, or anytime you're cutting something out, if you don't cut it in the right spot, you'll still see a little bit of the line, and then it kind of ruins the effect, right? Like if you see a little like leftover line on your, it's Halloween time, so let's say you're gonna cut out pumpkins. You wanna have just an orange piece of paper with a pumpkin on it. You don't want an orange piece of paper that kind of has some black dots on the edge only over here, because that's where your scissors got funky and you included the cut line. So with photography, think about there being a cut line, and you want to be inside of all the messy line on the outside. Does that help? What else do I adjust crop for? Oh, I am really mindful of human bodies being cropped. So if you're going to crop a part of a human body, do it mid-limb, not on the wrist, not on the elbow, not at shoulder, not at neck, not anywhere that's a joint. Because then it just looks weird. Like, how weird is it if there's just a floating head? Or you just lose your hand. Whereas if it's mid-limb, it's just easier to look at. All of these adjustments are making it easier to look at the photo, easier to focus on the main subject. So that means if you're taking a photo of someone standing and you go around the edges and you see that the photo at the bottom crops just across their toes, I would then move the crop up so that it's actually cutting across their shins. So we're not losing half a foot. We're not going to cut it off at the ankle because we don't want them to lose the whole foot. So we go all the way up to the shin or even the thigh, and now it's not about the foot. It's not about that weird, like, why did we chop off just 10 toes? It draws the attention back up to the face. If you want to include the feet because they're cute, then I recommend turning your camera downwards so that you can see the entire foot. And then the edge of the photo has that clean bleed off border cut line that we were talking about. Okay, so I just did a family portrait shoot, and now I'm gonna show you the screen recording of me going through the whole shoot that has already been edited, and you can watch me making all the little crop adjustments that I do, that I just told you about. The reason I spend so much time on it is because it really elevates the photos from good to great. It takes them from a cute photo to a photo that looks polished. It looks more professional. It looks, well, you have been more intentional about it. And it's all really subtle, like subconscious, subliminal. And people looking at your photos might not even notice what you've done, but they'll know that they like one photo better than the other. And if you like the way that I edit photos at the Happy Film Company, then cropping is a huge part of why you probably like what I do. Here you go. If you want, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel here where I post more videos like this for you. And if you want to schedule a photo shoot with me or a coaching call, you can go to thehappyfilmcompany.com. Okay, so I just cropped this one so that it was more clean. I really like the edges clean, so I'm kind of thinking like a as less distraction as possible, and then I'm cleaning up the horizon there. See this little tree right on the side there? I would crop that so that the photo has just clean dark edges. I maybe leave that one because you can see more of the tree. Sometimes it's not possible to do a lot of horizon straightening because then you might lose the person, but in this case that's okay. It wasn't that bad. I'm just going to zoom through. So yeah, mainly looking at like here, I test it sometimes. I'm like, is it possible to deliver that photo more straight? And I think it is, so then I do. If you lose any detail though, also like here you can see her tooth is just cut off and we don't need that weird like tooth or her mouth. So I do keep the cropping all in the same ratio of the original photo. So I hold the shift button to make sure that it doesn't change. And then I prefer that. I'd prefer just having her body rather than half of a mouth. I mean, you do lose a little bit of the expression, but at the same time, in my opinion, that should have been done in the camera. So I messed up by not taking a good cropped photo there. And then also, like, look at the edge here. This is how I like to crop it. If it's up like this, then it's still pretty clean. You can see both of her feet. But sometimes I like to come in even closer so that the entire side is just going through her body, because it's not about her as much as it is about this little girl. So I'm trying to make her kind of just like blend into the side of the image and not have attention drawn. That might be a little too close though. It might look kind of weird. So then I pull it back and I'm like, maybe that is better because you can see her feet. So it's not a hard science, but that's just kind of my thought process behind it. And then I would go through, same thing, straightening. That's my bad right here for cropping a little too close to their toes, so we'll just leave that. And then see this mom in the background? I'm going to edit her out because she does not add to that photo at all. So I'd rather have it be like that. Same thing here. Cropping out. It also makes the difference because now they might actually like that photo, and with the mom in the background they might not want it. Rotating this again, also that playground is kind of ugly, so there. And then on this side too, I would edit and crop that down like that. That's good. Oh, okay, see how his foot is cut off? I would crop that in so that it cuts more on his leg, so it's actually less distracting. Down a little bit more. Yeah, it's more of a beautiful portrait. The first time I felt like I was distracted by his feet. Okay, cropping on the horizon, pulling it down. Same thing for all of these, just like that tiny little adjustment. Probably pull this down, we don't need as much tree. Now, yeah, so the cropping is actually pretty significant in my book. So I do take the time to adjust all of these and do my best to shoot them pretty square. Pretty chaotic. Okay, here's an example. I might crop in to cut off his shirt so that the bottom there is just solid, so those pants are not distracting. Even that little leaf right there, I'm not liking that leaf. So I'd crop that in. Yeah, it's just perfectly clean edges. Going through quick. And then with the tree, so we had kind of a weird background for these portraits, so I'm going to try and eliminate the fact that it is a tree by zooming in more, so you're not seeing the edges of the tree, which kind of give it away. I'll let that one go. Try to keep. Now normally I may not care, but because these are like their school pictures, I do want it to be more consistent in the background. Just because that's what the schools have requested. So again, going up a little bit more there. Woo, okay. Zoom on through. Yeah. That's fine. It's more of a portrait. Here's an example. It's really when I'm looking at cropping, I'm looking at the subtleties on the edges. of the images. And at least my eye, sees it like this dark side of the image is not adding to the image at all. It's actually just kind of distracting. I would consider this gray thing on the side distracting, but I don't want to crop in too close to his head, so I'm going to leave it. Leave it. Forest is kind of fine. Again, this was like okay, because actually I like his whole body, so I'll leave it. It has to be sacrificed. Yeah, fine. I would crop this one down a little bit. We don't need it to be perfectly centered, and we'll get rid of the light that was at the top. Again, just pulling it in a little bit. I'm seeing just that shadow. And that's partly mine too, you know, my responsibility. And here, I feel like we've got too much on top, so we're just gonna pull that in tighter. Yeah, so a little bit more rule of thirds for them. Get rid of the side. I'm just feeling like these are a lot cleaner, and then these can be centering her a little bit better. Also, one side of the body got cropped on the left, whereas there's space on the outside of the right arm, and I would prefer to have that cropped in so that both sides of the body are getting cropped or chopped off. Same thing here, is trying to find equal symmetry. That looks a lot cleaner to me. We don't need the background, so I'm just doing this again and again and again. Don't need her hands either. We can actually make this a lot cleaner portrait, like that. Okay. Cute. Cut in. Take it up just a little bit. Bringing her more into center, just because these are the school portraits. Yeah, it's like a whole thing. That's fine. Actually, that's fine. Fine, 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 fine. Have we done these already? No, I think that was the end. Okay, cool. So that was just cropping.